Good morning, my name is Mark Stephen. I'm going to be chairing the vast majority of today's event. Welcome to our 10th Annual Digital Innovation Summit in Aberdeen. I've got a few intimations that I need to go through before we actually start the meat of the matter. Please turn all mobile phones or electronic devices to silent. If anything goes off during a speaker presentation, you have to stand up and do a little dance. It's very embarrassing. Toilets are located in this level 1 just along the exhibition hall. There's no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if one goes off, it is a real one. Just make your way to the nearest fire doors and staff will be on hand to direct you, and all catering will take place in Conference Suite 2B, which is next door. Now, before we get to our speakers proper, can you please welcome to the stage the founder of Digit, Rachael.
Right. Morning, everyone. I know we're running a bit late this morning, so I'm going to keep it very, very brief. I wanted to pass on my thanks to our sponsors today. I'm not going to go through the process of naming them, again, because we're running late, but please do afford them a few minutes of your time over the course of the day. There are some rather sexy prizes on offer at some of these exhibition stands, and I think sexy is the right word, particularly if you're a Lego fan. But to start off the prize list and to let you know who's got what, Softworks and Aruba are giving away 3 Echo Dots. Just go and get your badge scanned. We'll draw it during the drinks reception. Apple AirPods Pro at Zerto. Lego Star Wars at Tanium. There's a Millennium Falcon there. An Apple Watch at Seagal. A Millennium Falcon and 2 Millennium Falcons. So there's one at Unify. A MetaQuest 2 VR headset at IFB. So if there's any VR fans out there, just go and see the IFB team. A dining experience for 2 at DF Communications, and they've also got an F1 simulator as well if you fancy having a little spin around Brands Hatch. And also, Core to Cloud have got a lightsaber. There's a bit of a trend with the prizes here, isn't there? So there's a lightsaber on offer at Core to Cloud. But I've saved what is probably quite a remarkable prize, and one of our sponsors today is actually going to be giving away a Tesla. So if you go and see Tech Force, they'll give you one of these. Okay? I think they've got about 50 Teslas, actually. Tesla Roadsters. Go and see them. I'm going to jump down. Thanks very much. Have a great day. Team are here to help you. Over to the people that are actually interesting. Thank you.
Ray comes up with the strangest things. Sexy Lego. I suppose it was bound to happen one of these fine days. Anyway, can I invite to the stage now Angus Murray, who's Chief Information Officer for Thermal and EPM SSE. Give him a round of applause. We should really have music so they can walk on. The next 2 speakers are Charlie Atkinson, Head of Business Transformation at INEOS, and Esther Diederen, Director for Baringa. Up you come. You're not coming up. And finally, Rachael Coull, CISO for Mesmerise VR. We had a big argument about this beforehand, whether they should do this beforehand or whether they should do it afterwards. So we'll leave it to the audience. Did you like the walk-on? Yeah, there you go, fine. Easily pleased, that's what I like to see. Right, our first speaker is Angus Murray, Thermal and EPM SSE. What Angus wants to talk about is basically a review of the last 10 years and his impressions of where you actually go now. So, Angus, over to you.
Is this working? Yeah, so thanks for the invite, Ray, and I've only got 5 slides, but as somebody pointed out, I've got about 1,500 animations, so hopefully the batteries will last. But I've got the rare honour of actually being one of the few people that have spoken at this event 10 years ago, so that is just how old I am, and I then spoke for the following 5 years. So we just thought it might be a bit of a interesting to have a look at where we were 10 years ago and where we are now. I don't know if the mic, which mic should I stand here? And so what I thought I would do is just do a little bit of reflecting where we've been over the last 10 years and some of the things I've picked out and where we think we're going right now. So I was 20 plus years in oil and gas before I left to work for SSE. So I went originally to work in SSE Renewables, and now I'm looking after SSE Thermal and EPM, which is our energy trading business. So SSE, large energy company, got about 7 different divisions, from generation of electricity through mainly renewables and power stations, and then distribution of electricity and a bunch of other things. So probably the first part is this brings tears to most rooms in Aberdeen's eyes for some of us that have been on the various bumps that have come to and fro. But it was interesting to start to think about the last 10 years, and the reality is that, especially in Aberdeen, this graph is the thing that dictates a lot of what happens. And so actually I actually managed to find my slides from the very first presentation 10 years ago, which was looking at the technology trends. And at that time, we were up at $120 a barrel. We felt pretty good about things. We were trying to work out how to be a bit smarter, but we were also acquiring a lot. So a lot of M&A activity. And so what we were looking at that time was virtualization. What an amazing thing this was. So rather than buying, you know, couple hundred servers when we're doing big acquisitions where you're replacing all infrastructure, we were virtualizing everything. We were virtualizing our whole estate and seeing what that was bringing. So that's what we were talking about 10 years ago. And then it was interesting to think that we're also then discussing where we're going with cloud, what is going to happen. Cloud was being sold as all things to all men, but I think already we were on the big infrastructure journey. And this did make me laugh a wee bit, because at that point 10 years ago, collaboration, we're all talking about collaboration, but this was sort of pre-COVID Teams domination. So at that point it was everybody had everything and nobody could talk to each other. So we all had Link. I'd forgotten we even had Link. I'd forgotten about Link, and all the Polycom stuff, and Cisco were coming in. So at that point 10 years ago, we were worried about which system we were going to use, and we could all collaborate brilliantly just on our own. We just couldn't communicate with anybody else, seemed to be the problem at that point. And I actually remember at the end of 2014, Ray phoning me and saying, "Oh, we're doing the conference again. It'd be great if you come back to speak." He says, "What would you like to speak about?" And I said, "Oil price." And he went, "Oh, the oil price is pretty good." And all our predictions at that point in December were it was just going south. And I remember sitting talking about, we had scenarios and what would happen if it went below 110, and we had this sort of tab which was 105, below 105, which nobody could imagine, and then we dropped down to $40 odd a barrel, and so obviously that changed our focus significantly. And so when I came back that time, we were talking about what we were going to do about the oil price, what we were going to do about our reaction to that, and ironically, it's probably some of the stuff I'm most proud of, like how we reacted to it. I think we had a great team. Some of them are here today that really thought about how do we not just slash and burn, how do we do things a bit differently, could we work smarter? And so we actually set out quite a big plan on how we were going to go after things in partnership with our suppliers and try and work through our costing. And so that was, we'd set out a plan, but I never really like doing a presentation about what we're going to do. It's quite easy to say what you're going to do. So when Ray asked me back the following year, I was really keen to come back because we were able to come back and say what we actually did. So the year before we'd said what we were going to do. And so we came back talking about how we'd got on our cost transformation, and we'd had great success. We'd reduced our costs by about 30+%. A lot of our customer satisfaction had actually gone up. And we'd really changed the way we were operating as an IT function within TACA, and it was some really great work done by a lot of people that made it happen. And probably one of the biggest things that I still sort of hurts my head that we just don't do this better, which was at the time we put a massive focus on our service desk. We had a really good service desk. And so then when we looked at our costs, a huge part were our second, third line support teams. And went, well, actually, a lot of what they're doing is repeat tasks. Could we shift left and pass that to our service desk, train up our service desk? And the majority of our cost saving was that, just taking repeatable tasks that were going to expensive second and third line people and moving it to the service desk. And so then what you got was actually you were getting the cheapest people that you had possibly, resolving the issues, but much more important than that, our customers were getting resolution really quickly. So we were having first fixes of like 60+%, 60-70% from the service desk, and that didn't really even include, you know, the opportunity cost. We used to always bang on, it's not about the cost of the person making the phone call, or the cost of the person answering the phone, it's the cost of the person making the phone call. And so, like, we were doing acquisitions, people come from other companies, and they couldn't believe they actually contacted the service desk and they fixed something there and then rather than getting ping-ponged round. So, yeah, it's one of the biggest things. I just still think about that a lot, and we're always driving that. Just, I use the analogy that it's about like opening a restaurant. You've got all the best chefs, you've got all the best products, and you just don't really care who's front of house. And it just seems like bonkers. But yeah, that was a really great time, actually, what we did there. Then we were getting all optimistic, so oil price was creeping up another $10 or $15. So we started really thinking about digital transformation. You know, right, what can we do to actually bring new technology in, you know, bring technology to change the way we operate. And it was a bit of a call to arms. You know, we're all working in the industry together. There was some really good collaboration between companies. And so I think digital was really on everybody's lips, everybody was talking about, and we were really trying to push a lot of digital projects. And so then we came back, I came back the next year talking about digital. And this is one of my favourites. Esther, who's sitting here, Sandy is her husband, who was my boss at the time. And we were doing a Windows 10 project, and Alan Norrie, who's here, was saying we're doing Windows 10, and I said, but what's it doing for anybody? And nobody cares about it. And so we actually changed the whole project from Windows 10 to personal productivity. We changed the whole thing to, you're going to get tablet computers, we're going to teach you about, we're moving to Office 365, we're teaching you about how to be more productive with OneNote, with Windows To Do, all these things. And Sandy at the time was probably one of our great examples of paper-based person, I'd say. And so Sandy saw the new tablet computers and he really fancied one. So I said, well, the only way you're going to get one is if we upgrade you. So we went through a whole process of teaching him how to use OneNote for his writing up notes and everything. And for long enough, our project was called Sandy 2.0 because we actually upgraded Sandy. And Esther sometimes talks about that, of Sandy went from piles of paper in his house to just sitting there with his tablet. But it was a really good sort of example of something that you're really focusing on, well, what's in it for the business rather than what's in it for us. And I think so many Windows 10 projects were about security, about, you know, all the important things. We did all of them. We just didn't bother telling anybody because they didn't need to know. We were keeping them safe. We were putting invisible VPNs in. We were encrypting the devices, but none of that mattered to anybody. What we were doing was rolling out their mobile phones at the same time with Office 365. Their files were anywhere. They could work anywhere. We had Windows Hello, so they'd do facial recognition, so they could carry on using OneNote. So yeah, that was a brilliant project, and it was great to look back on that. Sometimes think we've gone back on quite a few of those things. And then I missed a year and then decided to leave and move to SSE, and obviously the oil industry took it really tough. But somebody said it was COVID actually that caused that, but anyway, I was leaving before that anyway. I'd resigned and I moved to SSE, and that was like a personal thing where I was really interested in what companies were doing around renewables and net zero. And that's been a really different journey in SSE, that the whole business is really completely focused on net zero. And so I didn't come back to Aberdeen for that one, but I did do a Digit presentation down in Edinburgh a wee while ago, talking about the role of technology in meeting our energy transition, which is, I think, something that is really interesting. So if we look at now where we are, I think everybody would agree that one of the biggest challenges we've got is the energy transition. So within SSE, we've got all kinds of work going on, but if you look at the scale of the work that's going on, so for example, our wind farms, Dogger Bank, we're partnered with Equinor, just the scale is phenomenal. It's difficult to see there, but the disk of one of these wind turbines in Dogger Bank is 4 times the area of the London Eye, more than twice the height of the London Eye, and there's about 300 of them. Just the sheer scale of what is being built right now and going into production, and so a huge part is really building up that renewable portfolio of either wind, hydro and solar. But interestingly, one of the areas that we're really focused on is around flexible generation. So the energy mix is now really, as you're bringing in a lot more of that renewable, and you have intermittency, so it's not always there, the wind changes, and so how you back that up with flexible generation. So the thermal business that we talk about is all our power stations, so Peterhead and about 8 or 9 other power stations. They're still gas-fired power stations, but a massive part of what we're doing is how you deliver the energy today, but set up for a net zero world tomorrow. And so, for example, Kedbe 2 we've just gone live with. It's the most efficient gas turbine in Europe. Somebody said the world, but it's a brand new gas-powered fire station, but the most efficient you can possibly make it. All our new projects are looking at carbon capture and hydrogen. So how do you, a massive focus is how do you balance that flexibility where if the wind drops, you can come in with other power. And then that also then goes into hydrogen as a possible way of storing energy, surplus energy, and also looking at batteries. So there's a huge amount of work going on there right now. And then another part, so Ian's here today from transmission. The scale of investment in SSE transmission and the transmission network in the UK is phenomenal. Huge projects, massive. So you need to bring the electricity from where we're creating these big wind farms and bring them to the mass demand areas. And so that's also a huge area for, just even distribution, getting the electricity to every house and up in that. And so the other kinds of things we're doing is hydro's been left for a while, but hydro's a great storage facility for energy. So with the surplus wind, you take pumped storage, you pump the water up to the top of the hill, and then once you've got a drop in wind, you bring the water back down and you generate a lot of electricity. And so we've got Corcas, which will be the biggest hydro pump storage in 50 or 60 years that's gone in. So there's a real big change in the energy mix. And then this, you're looking at renewables really changing the energy. I'm not meaning to have a dig at fossil fuels. That's a bad move in Aberdeen. But just there is a mix, and we've all got a part to play in that. And yeah, as of yesterday, on a normal day, you're looking at the UK, about 40% of its energy being provided by renewables. So really interesting place at the moment, and what's happening with that. The way when I talked at the Edinburgh conference, sorry if anybody was there and they saw this, I thought it was quite interesting to use a personal perspective to explain what's happening with the energy transition. So we got an electric car, thought that was really cool. Got a second electric car, really liked it, thought it was brilliant. We charged up overnight. We got a cheap tariff overnight, which then encouraged us to charge up overnight. Little known to us that also meant we were using all the surplus wind that was getting generated that other people weren't using, so they incentivised us with cheap rates to do that. So then we got all really green, and we put on the big solar panels on the roof and put in a battery system. So during the day, as soon as we've generated too much solar, the battery just charges up, and then once the solar drops, the battery kicks in, which is the biggest challenge that's going on in the whole UK energy mix at the moment. But it is really interesting from the point of view of what's happening. So you've got off-peak charging, which is actually a real market mechanism to try and get you to take cheap rate and use electricity, which is really green overnight, that's surplus. You've got the opportunity of solar export to the grid. So being able to take that excess electricity and share it around is a big thing. Solar divert, so our system is if the battery's full and you're generating lots of too much solar, it heats up the hot water with the immersion, you might as well use that. And so that incentivised tariffs, solar predictor, so it works out if we're not going to generate much tomorrow, then it might charge the battery up overnight on cheap rate and then use that during the day. But these are all things that are happening in homes that are actually a really good reflection of what's happening in the energy market. And so, yeah, you're balancing sort of intermittency, which is what we're trying to do at a national level. Storage of the energy is key. So when you're generating lots of sun at home, once the battery is full, what do you do? How do you use that? How do you use it wisely? Predicting the weather is a definite obsession within the business of how you predict everything from the market conditions and so yeah, it's just an interesting way. And I think when you look at Home Energy Scotland, I think that's a really important part of it, which is about a just transition. How do you make sure everybody can get access to these things so people can actually improve the way that they use energy? So our focus right now, and my focus for quite a while, is actually a lot more on agile. Like, how do we work is a lot more important in my mind than what it is we're doing. We've moved, and we did it in TAC, and we're doing it in SSE, or we've done it, which is really setting up our teams to be we've got agile teams that are focused on specific value areas in the business. They're a mixture of the business and IT. They're all working together. Deliberately, the business product owners are at the top. They're creating the demand. They're deciding on the priority. And so a massive focus in my mind is, I sort of feel it's more about how we work and how than the what. If we've got a really good engine and a way of delivering, then there's always going to be a new what. And so it's how we deliver really quickly with a business that's been making the biggest impact. And that's also included things like operational technology, which is, you know, traditionally waterfall, but we've been doing a lot of that. So currently that big focus is really how we're working and how we make that work across the business. And I think it's just also interesting to sort of think about a just transition, you know, like how do we move our energy system while being fair to everybody and bringing the industries along with that. So yeah, that's our current focus. What have I learned in the last 10 years? I think I've rather glibly put infra is done. In my mind, if I spend more than 3% of a day talking about infrastructure, I don't know why I'm doing it. So I think we've managed to, infrastructure as a commodity, it's something that happens, and it now means that we're at the point where we want a new tool and we're working with a supplier and we review their SaaS agreement and we're able to deploy that technology at a great pace, so I think it's a really great move forward from 10 years ago. Shift left, I just, yeah, service desks just blow my mind sometimes how they are and how that works with your customers, and just making that as good as it can possibly be just seems like such a no-brainer for me. The engine, so I did have a little petrol engine there, but I thought I should actually have an electric motor. So, but the engine, how we actually work is, as I say, more important in my mind than what it is we're doing. So we have to be really fast, nimble, being able to work with the business really closely, and that's what we've been focusing on a lot. And a big part of that is control, really giving over control. So I think what I've seen quite a lot is people in IT want to be in charge, want to be in control of what the business are doing, and just releasing that and actually working in partnership with them has been a big thing that's delivered results. And then a really important part is just the just transition. How do we actually transition our energy system and make sure it's fair for all? So you want to make sure that we're moving to low carbon solutions and everybody's involved and everybody's seeing that. And just the final thing was, thinking about the future. I would say for me, I'm equally scared as I am optimistic about the future. I think if you look at net zero, we've come so far, but we've just got so far to go, and I can't believe how many people I still talk to who talk about it like it's a choice, like it's something they're not quite sure about, and they don't quite think they should have a wind farm or whatever. I don't know what the answer is that. And I think there's as much of a just transition on technology. So I think it's the first time I've actually felt scared about technology and not just optimistic. So I think having teenage kids wondering what their future is going to be as far as automation, jobs, I think it's just as important to have a just transition of technology to work out who's going to get left behind and what everybody's going to do in those areas. So, yeah, so that was a quick spin through the years for the last 10 years. So, thanks very much.
Thank you, Angus. About 20 years ago, I was talking at a conference in Perth on renewable energies, and one of the other speakers was the project manager on a house in North Berwick, which was entirely run by hydrogen. You know, it was lit by hydrogen, powered by hydrogen, you know, the heating was hydrogen, you name it. And he used a line in his address where he described it as the Hindenburg house, which got a big laugh. But I thought was somewhat ill-advised. So at lunchtime, I happened to be sitting next to him, and I said, look, you know, it's your business, but referring to it as the Hindenburg house, if that gets stuck in the public consciousness, it's not going to pay off long term. And his wife, who was sitting next to him, hammered him in the ribs with an elbow and said, see, told you. It's got a lot of possibilities. A lot of possibilities. In many ways, it's considerably safer. Interesting. Thanks very much for that. Our next two speakers are Charlie Atkinson, Head of Business Transformation at INEOS, and Esther Diederen, Director at Baringa. I don't know whether they're coming up as a tag team or one at a time, but Charlie and Esther.
Right, good morning. Good morning, everybody. You can hear me okay?
You're kind of off mic. Is that working?
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, I think that's working now. Right, so start off with, hopefully it won't disappoint anybody, we're not going to be talking about innovative technology this morning. We're not going to be talking about new fandangled tech and AI and ChatGPT and all that good stuff. We're actually going to be bringing things back to basics, really talking about in programs driving value and bringing people to the forefront of how to drive change in a business. And hopefully for those who are clients or those who deliver and drive programs in business, you can take away some of the how do you get the organisation to engage. And for those who are supporting clients deliver their programs, how can you support them slightly differently? It's not just about delivering the program, it's about bringing the business on a journey.
Sorry, can you hear me? So we have 20 minutes. I think you both speak quite quickly. So we do a little bit of introduction, the real need for change. So why did INEOS go on this journey? The foundational principles that are basically, in my view, the key success factors of the program so far. The journey, so how did we get there and what have we delivered? Some lessons learned that hopefully are useful to you, and then looking ahead, where is the program going further? Just really briefly about myself, I'm a director at Baringa, it's a management consultancy firm. I'm based up here in Aberdeen, trying to build a team in the next few years. Prior to that, I was at Spirit Energy for 8 years, and at the end I worked on the digital transformation there, digital strategy, and I led most of the automation work. And we worked together, I think I saw James in the audience, on digital workplace. So how do we get people to actually use the Microsoft 365 suite? So where do we get the real value from there? And before that, I was a VP, had a short stint with Angus at TACA, and I'm back from the Netherlands where I used to be a consultant.
And I'm Charlie Atkinson, Head of Business Transformation for INEOS, please don't anybody ask me about the Manchester United bids and whether we're going to get it or not. I sit on the 4th floor in London below Jim, and I can tell you nobody knows what's going on, to be brutally honest. So don't ask, please. I'm looking after a big operating model transformation for the northern cluster of assets, and which really encompasses quite a large range from digital IT through to traditional restructuring programs.
Just a quick bit about Baringa, which I'm pretty sure everyone's very interested about. But we're a management firm, consultancy. We help clients to go through that transition, to any challenges they have. I think, well, everybody knows management consultancy, but we try to be the most trusted firm. It's probably sounds quite familiar to the other ones, but I think what makes us really different is that we work together with clients, hence I'm up here with Charlie, but also that we have a strong heritage within oil and gas and are coming from the industry. So we have a lot of wireline engineers, geologists, psychologists like me, and I think basically a bunch of nerds actually who like what we do. And then we have lots of prizes that we are quite proud of. That's in short.
And a little bit on FPS. So it was acquired back in 2018. Its midstream asset takes about 40% of the North Sea production and processes the oil and gas and puts stabilised crude. Everybody will know the 40s blend will reset the price through the processing. We actually have a really strong business performance. So it'd make you think why are we undertaking quite a big transformation and integrating into the northern cluster. The reality is, as we all know, we're transitioning away from fossil fuels. North Sea production's declining, so we need to integrate into the Grangemouth assets and integrate and upgrade the business in a way that is supporting the sustainability journey and the net zero journey. And we saw the digital transformation, digital part of our operating model change as a significant component in that journey. So this slide actually was part of a pack that I presented back in December 2021 to the exec and senior leadership of INEOS. It was all about how do we move forward, having moved from matrix organisation to a heavily divisional P&L asset and accountability focused. So we've done transformation in capital projects, how we deliver those, done transformation in maintenance operations, new management systems. So we'd done about 10 or 12 of the 20 programmes, but realised that our literacy around data, using KPIs, using reports, it's actually really immature, and we couldn't see or had no way of measuring truly the value of the transformation that we're undergoing across the operating model. So we saw kicking off our what we call the BI digitisation and transformation programme as the coalescing tool. But even back then, what was really clear to me is that it had to be value linked to the strategy of the business that was at the heart of the programme. This isn't an IT-led programme, this is a business-led, working really closely with IT, hand in hand. And we also knew, but we didn't know the degree that it was going to become so important, that it was going to be people at the heart of it. We knew that the starting point was pretty low, the bar was low, the literacy was low, but we, over time, and as you'll hear, found that it was people and educating our people was the thing that was going to unlock the most value for us. And in doing so, one of the other important things is making sure you pick the right partner to go on the journey with you as you start to set off and design your suite of programs or your transformation journey.
So we were asked by Charlie and the team to look at the organisation as FPS, and so if you want to become data-driven and performance-led, so what does need to be changed, or where are we? So we looked at the essays, and I think it's fairly common to say that especially with companies that grow through mergers and acquisitions or takeovers, a lot of the data was actually incomplete, and the quality wasn't that great, it wasn't really accessible, so a lot of people had to ask one person to find information. Then we talked about KPIs. Yes, there were some KPIs, but they really help you to see, have we done what we said we have done? And actually, what we said we have done, is it helping us to drive performance? So there weren't in that much KPIs, and there were also, the measurement was different. There was not one source of the truth. And then the other thing was around, well, actually, if you are able to get the data correct, and if you are able to get your KPI being monitored and have the right KPIs, it also means that your organization has to do something in it. So is the organization actually ready to take action when they get the data? Do they understand it? Do they understand how to use them? Otherwise, you have perfectly nice KPIs and you have all the data that's correctly available. But if your organization is not ready to receive it, then the value isn't there. So from there, we worked together with Charlie and the team on the objectives and the to-be situation that is...
So you may recognise some of the challenges on the left. You may have already been through your own journey. You may recognise them still now. But that's how we grouped them together. We knew we had challenges to overcome. So we really knew that the vision or the to-be place was making sure we had data that was available, believable, of the right quality, that could be seen from exec down to shop floor, known and believed and trusted. So that was one. Second was use it to do something with. There's no point in having data and KPIs for the sake of it. It's got to be useful. And then finally, it's got to be action-led and insight-led. So not only useful, it then has behaviours, actions, drives, motivators and moves that come off the back of it. So that was the setting foundation of where we knew we wanted to go. And also, we knew we were starting from a pretty low spot, so using Excels, disparate, individual people having access to information, some not, no real structure architecture. This isn't about telling you about our architecture, you can ask us if you want, but this is really knowing that we were disorganised, we knowing to get to where we needed to be much more organised to drive those principles that we wanted. But ultimately, there were 4 things that I wanted to underpin in the programme, and that is being at the heart, at the top, business value led. So working from the strategy and the scorecard through each function, knowing what KPI, what report, and how it delivers back down to the P&L or to revenue. So we did that for each function and had all the KPIs and knew what we wanted to report. The next one was about changing literacy, so educating, changing the voice in the room and getting people to really know what they wanted and how to do it, and democratising data, having the right governance. We're not going to build it all for them, but certainly we're going to build 80%, and coach, train, build competency, and let them do the enhancements, the polishing, work through the backlog, but give them the core structure and the governance, so we're going to let them break things to a certain point. Core reports are ours, subsequent reports are theirs. And then finally, and this is a really important one, is displacement. So in meetings, don't want PDFs, don't want written reports, want dashboards being used, don't want Excels. So it's removing old Excels, old reports, old KPI sets, and getting them storyboarded, coached, and driven into dashboards through our system and used and become part of business as usual. And that was one of the foundation of the programme.
Yeah, I think to elaborate a little bit on this. So when we see what we've seen in other clients and programs that we are doing, obviously one of the 4 is not really there. So it's sometimes you get into the projects, you're being pulled in and it's IT-led. Let's build dashboards because we want Power BI or we want to switch off that system. You get a nice dashboard that nobody uses. Very expensive dashboard, but nobody uses it if it's not done in conjunction. The same with I can't pronounce that word, democratization of data. It's either the company sometimes let it too loose and you end up with beautiful dashboards, but the same cottage industry as that you had with your Excel, again, very expensive. You're still not in control and you don't know whether the data is correct. Or, a bit like what Angus was alluding to, is that it's been made and it's locked so closely that nobody can actually touch the data because it's all governed too strictly and you can't do anything with it. So these are quite strong principles to hold when you go on a transformational journey. So when we, so what you see on the board is actually more the INEOS FPS program approach. It really works well with Baringa's way of how to go about a project. I think you often don't get a chance to really lay the foundation, because when we get to clients, it's like, okay, we have to get something out quickly. Just deliver. But because it was part of a bigger transformation, we really got the opportunity to get that foundation. So get the data correct, get your KPIs correct, and really starting to build that journey about how do we get the people along and get them data literate, Power BI literate. And that by setting it up like this, you reap the benefits at the end. Whereas often you start in the middle and it comes that, okay, we need to deliver and let's do the foundation in parallel. So having that luxury to do it like this is quite good.
We were honest and knew about our maturity, so we certainly weren't starting from shooting for the stars and moon. We know we needed to start at the beginning, and do it properly. So it was all about getting the foundations, getting the KPIs line to value, as I said. And now we're bang in the middle of the build and setting up the architecture and all the dashboards. But we're actually already starting to delve into the third phase, which is optimizing an RPA, and maybe one day we'll get to phase 4. We'll see.
I think I won't go too much into this slide, but what we wanted to point out here is that it's a true collaboration. So choose a partner that works with you and not delivers on behalf of you, because we can't get the business along. That's the actual business that has to do it like that. I think also wanted to point out, straight from the start, back in July last year, change was on the agenda. Change, ways of working, setting the governance, building that plan, and really right from the get-go have people thinking about that. Not just as an after effect when you have really pretty dashboards, but just right from the start, get them involved. We pivoted a little bit, so we have a design, it's a design team, so that does all the wire framing, it's a business analyst and one of our scrum leads together with INEOS, and then all of the technical delivery as well. I think what we also try to say on this one is that we have started with building the sustain function from the start. So we know which roles, we know, so when Baringa leaves, INEOS is capable and trained up to actually enhance the dashboards, maintain them in such a way, and even grow them bigger. So it's when we leave, there is something impactful there. So for change, I commercially not very smart, but I managed to work myself out of there, and there is now an INEOS full-time employee who leads all of the change. That's his job, which is quite good. So that's throughout the next few months we will phase out from this project.
We've put as much emphasis on ensuring we've got people, educated change, ways of working, a network of competent builders, etc., and the sustain model that will help maintain it once the project's finished, as we have into the design. So we've started with the end in mind to make sure that we deliver a good result.
So what have we delivered? Obviously, you can see that we have delivered the infrastructure setup with your ETL and your visualization layer. I think to be precise, we have built 105 automated pipelines. We have done all of the KPI dictionary, the Power BI governance is being implemented at the moment, and the really big thing is that organizational ways of work. So you have a MRBI network with champions that are being trained. INEOS is quite keen on getting quite a lot of, giving them a lot of, how do you say that, power to build their own dashboards. So knowing them when they touch the dashboard that they do it correctly, we build a training program and they're going to go to the certification. I think it's PR 300 certification, but just to get that feeling that yes, when these guys and ladies touch the dashboards, they know what they're doing, they can build it. So what we then have done, so since 4.5 months we are in phase 2, so we are pushing out dashboards. So we have built 28 reports, and I think we're probably saving hundreds of hours of manual work to what usually was to create these reports. In the first phase, we spent quite some time debating, so which one should we go first? So we went through the whole of the organization, from finance to technical to maintenance to agencies, so all of the organizations being touched. But what we choose was the daily ops support. So this goes out to everybody in INEOS FPS. Is it at 8 o'clock in the morning or 7?
Yeah, early. Yeah.
Very early in the morning. So what we did, so everybody sees Power BI right from the start. So they understand what the organization is going through and what they see. And instead of having an email sent to them with PDF that took hours to make every single day, this is now fairly automated as well.
So other parts of INEOS and other INEOS businesses are starting with a traditional, let's do finance reporting, let's do procurement reporting. We turned it on its head and said, where do we get the value to the people most quickly? So we said, let's get the ops report, the thing that touches everybody. So we know that the plant managers and the ops managers, it takes them about 3 or 4 hours to go through. This is quite a big, long report. It takes them about 3 or 4 hours to develop this, each shift. And then they talk through with the asset managers and everybody every day. By choosing this first, we've got phenomenal buy-in. It's a real game changer in terms of people at the coalface really knowing what we're doing and asking us for more. So we've shown them a little bit up on the kimono a little bit, and now they're wanting much more, which is great because we're pushing through different parts of the business. So as I've said a few times, in these sort of programs, and it doesn't necessarily need to be digital transformation or a BI transformation, but I think making sure you start with understanding the value and the objectives is absolutely truly key. And it's been throughout every single stage and phase. Then we learned that people are not necessarily that great at knowing how to design dashboards and put slides together, etc., etc. So in the second wave, we adopted more of a management consulting, strategy consulting phase of storyboarding, so we could help them align with what meetings they have, what reports they have, what KPIs they have, and be able to tell stories through their different reports. And that's been a game changer in meetings for us. And also, as you've seen from the morning report, we've been running, so we've been targeting everybody in the organisation, but also we've been doing show and tells, videos at each stage, show and tell at each dashboard, from the SHE ones to the projects ones to the ops ones, and doing lunch and learns and get everybody involved.
And I think, yes, be agile, work, delivering this in a Scrum methodology, I think, I don't need to go into that, but that really drives quicker results. So be agile to make sure that you can pivot when needed, that you can change the focus if you can't find your data source or the data is actually more complex than you thought. That happens most of the time. But also just be rigid enough to say stop. Because the moment you start building something and you put it in front of people, they want more and they want it changed and you want it whatever purple instead of pink. Just tell them at one point you need to stop because you need to get something out. From a change perspective, but also for the time of your development team, they have to move on to the next lot. Give them a chance to use the dashboards in anger and then make some changes. Then the other one, the network, I think it's change management 101. Everybody knows you need to create this network, Power BI Champion Network or MLBI Network. However, please don't see it as an admin role. It's much more to that. So if you can engage with your critical thinkers, those in your organization that say, why are we actually doing that? And how does it help me if I see this? And why can I not click through that? And can I link it with X, Y, and Z? And also the ones, I call them the keen beans, the tech-savvy guys and girls who are there and who really want to make that change and who help you to drive that change. Because that's, again, it's one of the key success factors of your whole program. Then I think Excel, I don't think we can get away from it. And Excel can be a very, very good friend and a very temporary and very flexible friend, but it can be very dangerous. You know, it's that friend that leads you astray, that always happy to take you out to party and lead you anywhere because it's easy and let's go. Excel is easy, yes, and it's flexible, but if you don't set up the right boundaries, it's going to cost you. Because we people don't like to work in a standardized way. So if you pipeline your data from Excel into Power BI, they start changing the font or add an extra column, or they don't like the way how the year and the month is presented. It will gonna cause mayhem. A lot of time you have to then spend in actually fixing your pipelines instead of building a dashboard. So that's one as well.
says last but not least, focus on data pipeline. That's true, but I'd say last but not least is really making sure you choose the right partner to work with, who that will align with your program and business principles and help you deliver in the way that you want to deliver the program. So just to close out, where are we going next? So we're in multi-waves now, but we're already seeing from the first waves that from previous transformation projects, such as the reorganisation and restructuring of capital projects, we've now got data that tells us really, really well where we're doing across a myriad of minor to major projects and how they're delivering and schedule all in one place. That's really transformative for INEOS. Well, we're going to continue driving through the different functions. This isn't a finance transformation of finance BI reporting. This is all of the functions and moving through them. We're going to continue to expand the network and build on the capability in the organisation. And we will put into place hire and make sure we've got the right solution architects and everything we need to make sure we can maintain the infrastructure that we've built and continue to grow it. So that's it on our part of FPS's transformation journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our final speaker in this first plenary session is Rachael Coull, CISO for Mesmerise VR. And Rachael wants to talk about how do businesses operate safely and securely in the metaverse. So Rachael, over to you.
Let's make sure all this works, this tech. So, just a bit of an introduction about myself. I've lived in Aberdeen all my life. I've been 20 years in the oil and gas industry. I see a few familiar faces in the audience today. A lot of what we discussed in both presentations today, it resonates with me. So, you know, more laterally, like the cloud journey, the modernization of IT, the digitalization journey, starting to use how can we drive innovation using different technology, AI, automation, and how do they fit in these organizations. So really relevant, comfortable speaking about them. I understand the challenges. Where it's slightly different for me is, so at the start of the year, I decided to embark on a different journey with a tech company. Completely cloud, completely remote, no infrastructure, all SaaS. Code development is DevOps or DevSecOps. So really living those things that we talk about and are trying to introduce into our larger organizations or older organizations which have hybrid environments. So my company, so Metaverse, is the key to what we're delivering. So Mesmerise essentially started as a technology company, and it's at this stage of scale up, and they realized that information security and cyber security is at the heart of what they do, which is where I came on board and starting up a function. So I'm assuming a lot of people already know, but I'll just share a definition, and this is a definition we use as an organization explaining what the metaverse is. The term metaverse I believe, was first coined probably in the 90s. It was actually a science fiction term. And here we are now living in a world where it exists. It started with gaming. And now, you know, it's becoming part of the big tech giants' future strategy. So we see it as the internet of tomorrow. So some of the metaverse is Web3, but not all. But we see it as the future of tech. It's immersive, it's interactive, it's use of VR, XR tech. It's a social environment, probably with the gaming, but it also has its use in the business world. So this is probably where I'm going to focus my presentation on. I mean, it's 15, 20 minutes that we have. I could talk at length about all the security challenges, the privacy challenges, the operational challenges that exist with essentially what is a new world, a new technical world. But where the focus is for me in this presentation, but also as an organisation, is where does the metaverse fit in modern business? So the dreaded C word, COVID, that's what I mean. COVID, basically, I guess, we all had remote working and home working, and it's become part of our life. So we fully see, and I fully see, and I guess I moved from a company that was home, as we all were during the pandemic, and then introduced to hybrid working, to something that's fully remote. So our organisation basically, you know, you're at home, but there is collaboration where you meet up at events and things like that. So there's definite real value in home working, remote working. I think all organisations have begun to use it. There's ESG benefits if it's done properly. It's also part of, I think, how our future generations, I know myself, my kids and that, don't see themselves working 9 to 5 in front of a computer all day long. And technology is part of their lives. So it's about how do we embrace that remote modern way of working, and can we take it further than just Teams? You know, Teams meetings all day is pretty frustrating, right? Because you need that face-to-face. So this is where the metaverse can come in with the use of VR. So it gives you an immersive experience. So where we see it is that there's the two areas here. So employee engagement, that's really where, as an organisation, you can have your own kind of world in the metaverse, and you use it for collaboration. You can use it for events, for example, this conference. Some of our early customers were actually events-based during the pandemic because they wanted to host a global conference, but obviously couldn't travel. So how do we do that? Well, spin up a world and send out the headsets and go from there. It also is an opportunity for, depending on the nature of your business, for clients, because it can add real value, branded experiences, it can enhance your pitches, it just comes across more modern. So, next slide. This is just an example for you. This is actually every Thursday for half an hour, our weekly all-team meeting. We put on our Quest headsets and we meet and actually have our meeting in there, in the amphitheatre. So you go down there, it's very similar to this, but you know, we've all got our avatars and there's presentations. So that was just to kind of bring it to life if it seems a bit, you know, odd talking about a world that's VR, but what does it actually look like? So I've only got 2 more slides, but these are the ones that I probably talk most about, really. So my last role, security function, oil and gas, looking at quite mature IT environments, hybrid, cloud, on-prem, offshore as well, where I worked, so the SCADA environments, understanding the risks and threats, building frameworks and controls that will support, you know, a mature environment to ultimately prevent a data breach and also, you know, keep it safe, keep the business working. But for me, this is the exciting bit and part of the reason I chose to join this tech company, because it's what does cybersecurity look like in this new world? What is the challenges? What is the threats? How do you even secure it? How do we make it? How do we get comfortable to operate in there? And obviously, some businesses will have a different risk appetite about how they work there. There's 3 key areas. So identity, you know, that is critical. That is core to operating in there. I mean, identity is critical for all environments. Zero trust that some of you maybe have heard about. But essentially, it's a very social environment. With generative AI, you're getting an avatar that can look really quite human. It can interact, can sound quite familiar. It's a naturally social environment. So we have to know that the avatar we're speaking to is who it is. So it's critical. Privacy, I mean, I've got a bit of a legal background as well, so this is always close to my heart around, you know, how do you operate legally from a data control point of view, personal data, the whole concept of IP, what is your property, what do you own in there, your digital assets. The regulations are playing catch up. There's an online safety bill, the UK online safety bill, which is trying to consider how to operate in VR worlds, but I mean, it's a way out, it's playing catch up. The tech giants that are kind of running the show here, some of them are using Web3, so you've got blockchain, which I think is going to be critical, but not all of them are. It's not standardized. I think it needs to be standardized, and I think it will be in the future. You know, because that goes to encouraging business use, we need to make sure, you know, your files are safe. What type of information you're sharing in there? Is it safe? If you have an avatar close to you, can they hear what you're saying? How do you control all of that? And then, obviously, the last one here, like, what does social engineering malware look like? What kind of threats are we talking about? So, without making it sound too out there, essentially, there's a lot of money in the metaverse. I think the last time I checked, and I don't have all the details, but this one jumped out in my mind. It was a pair, I think it was crypto kicks, so a pair of Nike trainers sold for nearly $200,000. So there's actual digital assets changing hands here, quite significant amount of money. There's property being bought. So where there is money, there's scammers, right? And scammers want the assets, the digital assets, so they're going to try and hack them. How are they going to do that? Yes, the techniques on how they do it, how they break the code, how they appear to get in and do that will be different, but the fundamental tactics are the same. They're going to try social engineering to convince or take identity of a different avatar or assume identity, understand who they're talking with to try and trick or gain access to information, and then, you know, do the typical social engineering. It won't look like what we're used to now, which is usually click a link in an email and do this. It'll look completely different. It might be that a bot's been hijacked, like a chat, and it'll direct you to go to a different room in the metaverse, and so it's the same, but it'll look slightly different. So for me, this is the exciting bit, because when I first started in this organisation, and a lot of this is quite thought leadership, all the big consulting companies are starting up divisions in this. There's academia and academics doing research papers, and there's a lot of brainstorming around it. To create a world that is secure for people to operate in, not just business. You know, community guidelines, standardized technology, whether it's, you know, we're going to use a lot of edge computing and things like that. So what's the standards? Can we build and design in a familiar standardized way? Because that will reduce the risk. So this is all quite in its early days, and this is what I found exciting, because I thought, well, I can be part of this and I can hear what's happening, and it's not established yet, it's going forward. But where do I take my existing knowledge and understanding of how cyber works and what the risks are from my experience in oil and gas? So the last slide, and we can talk a bit about this. So for me, whilst it felt at the start quite something new, and you know, I went down looking at different codes, exposures, and getting really deep into the technical stuff, and then I took a step back. You know, I'm a CISO, I don't need to be doing that yet. I've got a team, I'm hiring people to do that. So just started thinking about, well, how do we protect ourselves? What is the challenge? And I think realistically, the risk-based approach still applies. You know, what are the risks? What is our appetite for those organisationally? If you're a financial institution versus a different type, you know, you're going to have a different measured approach. But again, with all new technology, it's about risk and opportunity. So I think that's at its core. I still subscribe to the cyber framework of NIST that you may or may not be familiar with. I think it still applies. I still think our ISO standards apply, and their approaches, they are going to modernise. They've modernised for cloud. They're just going to have to evolve a little bit further. But I think everything that we think of now in terms of protecting our environment still holds. It is still tech. Yes, it's headsets and they evolve, but they can be vulnerable. They'll need patch, things like that. It's still networking. It's still communication protocols, so it's similar. It's just the same, but slightly different. And it's that difference there that is what I'm focusing on and trying to understand. So I guess for me, and my advice to any organisations that are wanting to take a journey and maybe look at how the metaverse or how VR or augmented reality can help some of your digitalisation journeys. My last company was definitely using HoloLens for digital twins and things like that, whereas the VR space is fully immersive. I would say make sure that you partner with the right firm to deliver this, because they will help support the right platforms. Because I do think there are some base principles that need to be adopted. I mean, for me, that's Web3 and blockchain, so that we have secure identities, but also that organisation or that partner that you're working with talks the talk about cybersecurity and really understands that data is everything here. It's a hugely data-driven environment, and it's extremely social. So there's a lot of risks there. But yeah, so to round it off, it was a bit quicker than you guys, but I think it fits quite nicely. I think in the afternoon there's some chat about AI and different types of tech. So I think this probably sits just after the oil and gas and the data-driven conversations, and then into the modern tech in the afternoon. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Now, there's going to be an opportunity to ask questions now, but I'm not going to chair this section of it. That's going to be done by Graeme Gordon, Chief Executive Officer of IFB and Vice Chair of 1D&E. So, Graeme, over to you.
Thank you, Mark, and good morning, everybody. Rachel, cybersecurity and legal in one brain there. That sounds like an expensive day rate to me. But that's a good thing. We've got a couple of roving mics kicking around in the room, but before we get to your questions and have a think about them, I'd like to come along the panel and ask you the first question around skills and talent. We talk a lot about, or there's been a lot about conversation about digital transformation. Is it the tech that's transforming businesses? Is it the businesses that are acquiring the tech to transform and modernise? And how much has that been driven and led by people? And Charlie, you spoke about people at the core of what you were doing there. Is the tech exists. It's down to how people need and want to use it in the business, I suppose. And what's your been experience over the last 10 years in that, we're taking that sort of space?
So I think you're absolutely right. I think the need and the demand and the drive is coming from the business. And the technology is a core enabler, but if you can't use, understand, engage with, consume, manage and perform on the back of data, then you're never going to win the fight, you're never going to deliver what you set out to do. So what have I seen over the last decade or so? I've seen a lot of appetite, a lot of acronyms, a lot of people wanting to understand what big data is and what it means for them. But what I think it's really boiled down to is getting the foundations and getting the basics right and getting people trained and competent and getting what we call the right data language literacy to be able to engage with their own data and understand the wider business data and what the implications are for them. So, for example, those who are building the Power BI end decks for us after the team have gone, they are not just administrative staff, they're parts of each function. They're layering in what they need for the functions with the design concepts of what they need. Wouldn't have been able to do that a number of years ago. They're starting to understand about data pipelines, governance, really getting into the IT support space. But we've set up the operating models to make sure that they can operate in the right places and give them the sandpit, and that's important. Give them the sandpit to play without being able to break things, or have the mechanisms in place so we can quickly react. So as I've said up there, I think people are really at the heart of making it happen, and the youngsters get it straight away, but actually a lot of our BI champions are not the youngsters, no, the leaders, but it's a really broad age range of mix of people getting really excited about it, talking about it, and the buzz is fantastic, and we're sending them on training courses, doing lunch and learns, getting them together, doing mini hackathons. It's fantastic, and it's just something that INEOS wouldn't have thought about absolutely 5 or 10 years ago, because we're very, very, very financially focused and orientated and cost optimized business. So now we're talking about numbers in a different way. It's really, really good to see.
And taking that, thank you, and taking that a stage further, there's probably a lot of people in this room that have digital adoption was you turned up to a job and there's your new PC, and not many people were shown how to use the basic tools in that. Angus, how's that worked in terms of, you're talking about Sandy 2.0, you made the technology easy for somebody to work with and play with, and they couldn't break it, there were parameters. But that skill set in terms of adoption, rather than digital transformation, back to the word adoption, very much relies on people being able to use it to make a difference in their job. How key was that for your work and role?
Yeah, I think
if we go back to the Sandy 2.0 thing, that was a really traditional IT project with lots of problems that we're fixing with a new laptop. But it was almost like, well, if you're going to go through the disruption of going to a new laptop and you're going to give somebody a shiny new toy, tell them they're not going to get it until they've done all these things, and show them, it was more about showing them a way of working rather than talking about all the technology. I always remember somebody was really pleased because we'd put in the invisible VPN, it was all, and somebody had written a 2-page document explaining the invisible VPN. Well, no, the whole point is we don't have to tell them anything, just say you can work anywhere. And so I think it's a lot on us as IT professionals to sort of make, think of it in terms of what the business actually want. And half the reason the Sandy 2.0 thing came around was walking back from a coffee with somebody in the business, going, oh, what are you up to these days? Oh, we're about to roll out Windows 10. What's that going to do for me? And you're sitting there going, no, we could justify it all on ourselves about security and all encryption and all these fancy things, but it wasn't actually going to make his day any easier. And so I think that's, how do you make, think of what the actual business is going to need that's going to make their day easier and make it more efficient.
Yeah. Esther, do you think sometimes from an IT services or an IT delivery point of view, we overcomplicate in the way that Angus has maybe said that most people are used to pushing the app button on their phone, they've got no idea about the coding or the depth of expertise and years of development and the 2 pages to explain the VPN. Nobody's interested in that, they're really interested in that end result. Have we cultivated that to a point that is dangerous perhaps within businesses and we are re-educating, or do you think that's a bit of an...
I think there's more now around, like what Angus mentioned, so when we train people, what's in it for me? Like when you go on YouTube, you don't care how that has been built. You just look at the video and think, oh that's how I have to do it. So it's the same with any of the new tools. It's about what does it do for you? How does it help you? And I think to go back on that point, it's about when you roll out things, make it as simple as possible, because people don't want to hear all the stuff. They just want to know, how can I do this? How does it make my life better? And even with when you roll out M365, when we did it at Spirit, we realized that some of the basics like Excel and PowerPoint and Word, that has gone from 10 years to now it's massively changed. So you said you got your laptop and let's start. Who had an Excel course when they started, or a PowerPoint course when it started? So having even those, we did 10-minute sessions on quick hacks on PowerPoint, 5 minutes time save on your Excel. These things are powerful. That's what makes your day a bit better if you have less of the admin stuff that you had to do by just using technologies that are out there in the real world, but not in your day-to-day work. I think that's the big thing.
That's good. So have a think about, just before I ask Rachel the same question, have a think about if you have a question on the floor about anything you've seen today, stick your hand in the air, someone with a microphone will come and get you. Please try and have one. There you go, we'll get one at the back. We'll come to you just in a second. Rachel, just following on from that, you're probably the youngest company on the panel.
I'm the youngest.
Of course, that goes without saying, but I'm not allowed to say that, but you said it, so it's fine.
I might not be.
Yeah. So, Mark is offended, by the way. So
No, I'm not.
how do you feel that people working in a very young technology, in a very young company, and traditionally will be a slightly younger generation, how do they take training in technology compared to the generation above? Because we've been handed things and never shown how to use even the basic but most essential tools usually. Yeah. Is there a training requirement and a learning requirement? You feel that they're hungry there?
So it's quite an interesting story. So when I first joined this organisation, I thought, right, I'm going to use my experience as a new start to figure out what's going on. So, my start date was Monday. I'm like, what's happening today? And I got a laptop in the post and an email with to set up my M365 MFA, and that was it. And I figured it out, which was quite miraculous, and I thought that's a good start. I think it was easier because there's no desktop software, there's no infrastructure, there's no applications, it's all SaaS. So if you have a browser and you have Microsoft suite of tools, that's it. So I went through that. You had to do a little bit of configuration using Facebook, and I was noting down privacy concerns about using your own Facebook to set up your Quest headset. But again, limited training on that. What we have in the organisation is what we call onboarding heroes, and they're really for the customer experience, but they also leverage for us. But that was to how do you use the metaverse, not about how do you use a computer and how do you configure your Outlook and all those things as an assumption that people should just know how to use them. The training part is mostly, so I've obviously come in to do the cyber piece, so I'm training people on the cyber and having to do that in a way, and was hopefully going to do it in a virtual environment, so use your headset and do something with that. But the actual IT part of it, there's no training. The organisation, there's an assumption, you just know how to use some of this kit. And it's not all young people in the organisation. We have a data science department, older, some older people in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the adoption part is all about people. It's not about the technology. It's about that value of using the piece of technology. And I think a lot of people would resonate with that in the room, and rather than the tech driving it forward, which is great. I think we have a question in the middle of the floor at the back there. If you can maybe, if you're going to stand up or you can sit down, you can but certainly tell us who you are and where you're from, please, and your question.
Hi, good morning. Nassima Brown from Phoenix. First of all, I'd like to thank the panelists for your great presentations. I think the presentation from Charlie and Esther really resonated with myself and the company that I represent. Seeing the journey that INEOS, behind the scenes, have been taking throughout the digital transformation was really impressive. I think INEOS is known for its, like you said, Charlie, the focus on cost and extremely lean organization. I would like to ask you, of course, digital transformation is, the benefits are known, but it's not always a successful undertaking for many companies, small, medium to corporate. And of course, myself and perhaps the audience really would like to take home some of the learning lessons. Is there anything that you can share with us that we can learn from your journey based on failure, things that hasn't gone right as they should have been? Thank you.
Oof, thanks, Nassima. Charlie, you're up.
Oof. How much should I disclose? All programmes have a degree of failure built in, and yeah, the very linear waterfall doesn't really allow for a lot of that. But so to answer your question, I'll bring it back to this programme. Starting out, we knew we looked at where we could fail, and getting, as you said, INEOS being very cost focused, EBITDA delivery, and accountability driven. We realised that to sell the story to the exec to get the buy-in is very much, well, how do we get to the next level and support net zero and sustainability and all those things if we don't do what everybody else is doing in the transformation space. But what we realised is we couldn't afford to fail in the same way that maybe other companies that are less cost focused can. So if I was to run over budget in an extreme way, or fail fast and costly, knew that this sort of program would get killed quite quickly. So in identifying the areas where it could really optimise cost up front, and being able to steer the ship and keep on point was really important. So one of the learnings was about educating people to design dashboards for value, and them not being able to, write a compelling story in a slide deck, but you're expecting them to write a compelling dashboard or design a compelling dashboard. So we pivoted really quickly, knowing that we needed to keep the programme on board, we needed to keep the exec on board, we needed to keep within budget, we wanted to work with premier partners, and the only way to keep costs very, very, very tight was knowing exactly how, being hands-on in the design of the programme. So this wasn't let's hand it over to the management consultants, do it for us. This is we're working together on this. We know where we can fail and we know how we can adapt. So things like the pivot from wave 1 to wave 2 to upfront storyboarding and design. So my advice would be, look at that last slide, look at, and you can apply them to any single programme, not just a digital programme. and have a think about, as you start off, you know what your success criteria is, you know what your objectives are, but also look at where your risks and where your failure points are and what you can do to mitigate up front, and being really, really quick and honest and quite frankly direct. We were quite direct with you guys when we knew that we needed to pivot and support the organisation more in the design. We almost took the end decision, the design, off their hands, and had, you know, certain individuals who are more experienced at storyboarding be able to sign off, but really support them in, you know, we know what the KPIs are, but how do you use them? How do you use it in a meeting? How do you use it to replace that part of the agenda? That was really new, and we knew that it was a problem from the first wave, and we pivoted on the back of that. Does that answer your question?
Maybe carry that sideways, Rachel, in terms of that resilience and adaptability and that fail fast or experiment environment. Where does your technology come into that to help businesses maybe experiment with something and try something that has a lower impact in terms of operational profits? You know, you're trying to run a business in a tight cost base, but there may be high risk elements to it. Where do you see that coming in, that allow organisations to digitally experiment with a much reduced risk to, you know, to give us more resilience and learn from it?
So it's actually, even though it sounds like a more modern type of approach, it's actually quite similar to what you were saying, in that you have to engage with the client and get quickly what they want and what their key success criteria are. So we've got quite a big team that's just actually been relaunched that is primarily focused on, it's called it's a solutions group, but it's a mixture of understanding with the tech companies about where the product is going, so product strategy, what it can deliver in the realms of possibility. The team that is very close in to being able to explain that experience with the customer in the right type of language and approach, so translating, you know, tech words and concepts into business language. So I guess that's like storyboarding, perhaps. And also the teams that, when it is decided they're going to run an event or use it, hand-holding, that kind of onboarding, white glove experience. And at the same time, there is a team that kind of presents that in the right cost approach. Mm-hmm. So it's all those factors working together, but it is very similar. It's about knowing what the success criteria are, being able to translate that quickly to cost, and being tight on deliverables. You know, what do you need for day one versus day three? What's the immediate requirement? Is it just an event, or is it actually going to develop into perhaps SaaS subscription where they have it longer term, you know, to run weekly meetings like what we do, or is it just events? So it is just capturing the requirements and success criteria, and also, like you say, pivoting. If it's not right, then being able to stop, go back, capture what you're doing right, and move forward, and not just drop everything. So it's again back to that agility.
Thank you. So I'm going to come back along the panel in a second. We've got another question from the floor just at the back here. What I'd like you to think about in terms of skills and talent is to leave the room, leave the people in the room, or leave the audience in the room with what they should be thinking about skills and talent-wise into the future. Because the technology exists, and you know, we're going to need people to deliver everything that we do in our business. And you know, 2,500 computer science students in Scotland, 9,000 jobs every year. So there's a massive gap. How does that fit into your businesses? So I won't ask you about it just now. I'll have a think and I'll come to you in a second. Question at the back of the room. Who are you and what's your question?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, panel. It was good hearing your journey into digital transformation. My name is Yemi Scott. I'm the founder of Exerology, and that is a Web3-based design consulting. My company is really new, but I've been exploring the metaverse and digital asset creation since 2016, focusing in the fashion industry and trying to cut down the carbon emission using digital twinning for fashion ideation all the way down to just simulation. And Rachael, this question is for you. I've been in this space in Aberdeen and set up the business. It's been less than a year, but I have realized that having a conversation about the metaverse, Web3, has been quite challenging because the space is still very new. It is so emerging, and people are still very skeptical when they hear crypto, when they hear blockchain. And I just want to ask, How soon do you think we will stop having these onboarding conversations? Because that's technically what we're doing right now. We are literally educating the people and the business and the space that this exists and this is safe. When do you think we're going to have companies coming to seek out this digital transformation from a place of actual understanding and not just feeding into the story of Meta and what Mark Zuckerberg is trying to, you know, demystify the world with, that is not the metaverse. It is a multiverse. It will function on different levels for different sectors to do different things. But when do we start to move that conversation into where they actually understand what it is that we're talking about?
That's a really good question. So me and you should probably match up together and connect.
A real coffee, not a virtual one.
Yeah, a real one, yeah. Well, maybe. Depends, you could maybe win the headset and then, yeah. So it's a really good question, and it's part of my company's issues, maybe a stronger word, but it's that convincing, because it's so modern, it's how do you convince some companies about how they take that next step. And when I think about it, to me it sounds a bit familiar. I'm trying to think of the timeline. Maybe say 5 years ago, maybe more, when companies just didn't like the thought of cloud or SaaS, right? And it was just like, no, I don't want my infrastructure and my data in that weird cloud place. And you're just like, it's just a managed infrastructure. It's just the same. You know, and actually some of these tech giants invest so much more than we could ever possibly invest in protecting their environments, and they're inherently safe. But it's a mind switch about almost handing over to a different environment. But to be fair, so there's that inherent, you know, it's to do with change, isn't it? But it feels a bit similar, but a newer conversation. I think we're probably a couple of years, maybe 18 months to 2 years, where it's more mainstream. There's different timelines. Again, that timeline is debatable as well, depending who you speak to. A lot of my colleagues or other people I've spoke to, they seem to think as soon there'll be a big bang approach. It's almost like Google before it went wild. At the moment, the headsets are kind of clunky. But when we start getting like glasses like this, I think Apple was going to do it. I don't know if they're doing it anymore. But I think when some of that hardware, that tech becomes more modernized, I think then it'll just take off massively. So it's about preparing for that. So my gut feel, I get some people say, oh, it's about 3 years, some say 18 months. So I've kind of thought, oh, well, maybe 2 years, right? So, but that doesn't mean to say that we won't have the struggles in Aberdeen per se, because I think it does depend on your clients and the industry and how connected they are to tech. How much they're embracing. I think there's a real opportunity with ESG, you know, in regards to sustainability and environment, if you're really going to adopt remote hybrid working fully, and how do you take it out of the team space and into a more immersive experience. But to answer you directly, I think we're still a couple of years off. But that's not to say we won't make huge bounds. And it is directly related, I think, to the tech giants. As we know, Meta's on board fully with Facebook, but we need the other ones as well to come on board. And I think it'll just suddenly explode.
You know, this story of tech is usually, if there's value for the user, they use it. You know, there's a reason that Google Glass didn't work. Lots of reasons it didn't work, and that evolution there. We're going to round up very quickly, and the three of you have had a great opportunity to think about this now. Talent and skills, digital transformation, digital adoption. Angus, I'm going to start with you. What do you want to leave the people in the room thinking about from a specific of talent and skills to deliver digital adoption and transformation in your business? What are you looking for from your future employees?
I think what we're trying to do is probably blurring the line between what we traditionally talk about as IT in the business. And so like when we're setting up teams, it's bringing the IT people's knowledge up on business and bringing the business people's knowledge up on technology, so they're now both having better conversations about how we deliver things better and quicker. So I think it's more adaptability and less maybe traditional routes. You know, like we've got a graduate and she did maths, I think, is a degree, but she's just come in and she's doing great around the team. But so I think it is. I think it's that. The other thing I think is companies really have to start committing properly to like graduate programs, and you know it just scares me, like everybody's gone so short term, and you know like that's one thing I would say with SSE, there's huge graduate program, graduates get their own conference, they get moved around all around the company. It's like a real traditional, what used to be in loads and loads of companies, but have really gone away. So I think if MD is here in companies with some kind of influence to really push graduate programs, because you need to bring in new talent and different ways of thinking.
Thank you. Charlie?
I think Angus said it a little bit more eloquently than I would have put it, but I was thinking exactly the same thing. I'd love to see the traditional oil and gas operating model flipped on its head, where you have production units with mechanical, electrical, instrument, automated process control engineers, all coming through graduate programs, coming together and learning operations. I'd probably go that one step further and have tech, your engineering, your data engineering, and folk, and actually embed them in the assets, embed them in operations, embed them in pods, embed them in teams with the traditional disciplines, so that as tech evolves and we're using more tech out in the field and we're getting more and more information, they can be doing changes online and dynamically and becoming part of the BAU. So I'd like to push it a little bit more aggressively into operations.
Thank you. Esther?
Yeah, I think like what you said, but also from another perspective, because the workforce is changing, our work will be changing with robots, artificial intelligence, all of the metaverse, all of that. There's a wealth of knowledge sitting with, it sounds maybe bad to say that, but with the older generations. Bring them along, give them the time to upskill. Don't say, oh, well, here is your new thing and just do it. Make a conscious decision that you upskill them. Either you help your IT function to upskill in all the new technology, but also the people who have to use it. Don't discard the older guard, because they hold your knowledge, they hold the experience of the business. So you have all the youngsters coming in, but that experience and knowing where the business is and how it ticks, don't discard them and bring them along on the journey, because we don't have enough people. We just don't have enough people. We can't fill it with the heaps of youngsters coming in, because unfortunately not all of them want to come into the oil and gas anymore because of where we are. So don't lose your older generation.
Thank you. Rachel, final words for you.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it from both sides, from my recent experience and long history in oil and gas, about the adoption of tech and how we kept getting it wrong, and how, it's like you say, they have to be upskilled and know how to use it, and if you're going to use it properly and properly do it, and whether that you make it disruptive and you get it in and you do it and everybody uses it and you get the proper adoption. So I think you really need that, but I don't necessarily think that's an inherent part of an individual. That's a direction and leadership from the organisation. I think from my current working in tech now, data science is everything. So we've got data science and AI function, data engineers and all that. I really see data being the future. It's also connected to the metaverse as well, because it's completely data driven. It's going to use edge computing to have the the volumes of data that's going everywhere. I think the legal and cyber, I'm selfish, I think that kind of skills and understanding of that needs to be out there. I mean, where we have the combination of the two is because when you're starting using headsets and that, you're starting collecting potentially data that's sensitive about health, about emotions and things like that. You're going beyond just the traditional gathering of data. So data science and acquisition. But across both of that, the type of people I think that you need is more related to personal qualities. So people that are resourceful, adaptive, interested in new things, can relate to different people. I mean, those qualities I think transcend any particular technical skills.
Thank you very much. I've blown the time budget this morning, so I do apologise to the organisers. One big round of applause for the panel. I hope you found it really enjoyable. Angus, Charlie, Esther and Rachael, thank you very much.